Hello and welcome to Mobius and Back Again. It's the first episode where we go over the Archie Sonic comic book series.
How exciting!
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
I would.
So, I am your host, Felicia, and I'm once again flanked by my co-host.
And here we are going to be talking about, of course, one of, if not the most famous of the non-Japanese, I guess, pieces of media of Sonic.
Yeah.
It definitely has an enduring legacy, which is part of what we want to talk about, actually.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's such a big piece of media. How's a little burn there for you folks at home? I was almost calling it a piece of shit, but it's actually not largely bad. It's only mostly bad, and yeah, it's had some effects. It's a big deal. I would say Archie Sonic is a big deal for Sonic fans, for the Sonic franchise, for the world. Cluster.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a very, very bold claim right here at the very beginning of this read-through review podcast series. It's that the Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comic has had a very large impact on not only the fandom of Sonic, which is very clear. You still see fan art of characters introduced in these comics being made today, even though the comics have not been running for over 4 years now, or so.
God, has to be.
Going
on half a decade.
Yeah, it's beginning to be quite a while since these comics have not been going. So, well, at least we won't have any additional comics coming out for this series that we'll have to worry about. So
yeah,
it's all wrapped up in a nice little bow. But I actually want to skip forward a number of years, leaving 1993 briefly to go over to 2017, which is after the comics stopped happening, to talk about the, at time of recording, most recent mainline Sonic entry, Sonic Forces.
Yeah.
Sonic Forces, of course, very well known for having a character creator, and I personally attribute the existence of that character creator largely, in my opinion, to this comic series. In an interview, I believe, leading up to the release of Sonic Forces, Iizuka Takashi, the producer of the Sonic series, if I have that title correctly, he said in an interview that since around 2003, I believe, he had actually been wanting to put a character creator into a Sonic game, and they only ended up having the opportunity, technology-wise, I suppose, and other things, as a Sonic Forces. And
where'd that desire come from?
Well, the motivation for wanting to put a character creator into a Sonic game actually came from the Western fan base, and the tendency of the Western fan base to create their own Sonic-like characters.
I see.
Now, of course, in these comics that we're going to be reviewing today, and the comics we're going to be reviewing for quite a while, you're probably not going to see much of that connection, but as the series went on, different writers tended to introduce many characters that were very similar, and some might say too similar, to the appearances of the main heroes of the games, characters like Sonic and Tails and Knuckles.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's all the introduction of those characters and the world and all that together that I believe inspired fans to not only create their own characters, but to draw them, to make them look and feel like they also belong in this world of Sonic, and
subsequently send those drawings to Sega in some cases.
Which is how, of course, Iizuka even saw them.
Yeah.
And could specifically note that they were from, the English-speaking fan base in particular.
And I believe countless personnel, at least in the comics-making space of the Sonic franchise, have gotten their start just from having made fan works.
Indeed, especially in the modern day, where we're actually
Certainly.
we are creeping up in not related to Archie comic, but in the current Sonic series IDW. Is about to actually have a new head writer in one Evan Stanley, who was a noted Sonic fan artist before working on the comics officially.
Yeah.
A feat which has happened a few different times over the course of the series. Well, the franchise, I suppose, where fans have been able to contribute to these comics.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to 2003, where the dream of making a custom hero feature in a Sonic game was born, that was around the time that I think Archie Sonic was really in its golden age, or at least at the tail end of it, where the comics were really in a good place. They were fun to read, at least as I recall from our last read through, and they had built up like so many years of stories and characters and inspiration for people reading it.
Yeah.
And that, like, initiating fans to make these things on a level that Iizuka could not ignore. Like, I could totally see that. I wasn't a frequenter of the onlines back then.
Yeah. Neither was I. I suppose it is probably worth it to point out, I did not read these comics growing up.
I did.
Yes. These comics also started coming out before I was born.
Same here.
And I only actually read through them. I read a bunch all through them, however many were out at the time, when I was a teenager, about 14 or 15 or so. I was more charitable to them then, also, because I had worse taste, because I was 14 or 15 or so.
Yeah, and I was a child reading midway through the 190s over to the early 200s of Archie Sonic. And I believe that's the perfect time to have the maximum enjoyment of those comic books, not to add too many spoilers of our opinions to this show on episode 1.
We'll get to all of that, and we'll talk about our opinions on individual characters, storylines, and writers and artists as they crop up. For the most part, we are going to be wanting to focus on the stories in front of us, but of course, given that this is the first episode, we want to talk a little bit about the series as a whole, what we're getting into, and why, I guess, we are doing this. And
yeah,
I don't know, a big part of why, I think, is just because all of this here, the Archie Sonic and all these comics, the fans and their remembrances of them and such, they're important in various ways. And I would dare say that of all non-game media, Archie Sonic might have had the debatably largest impact on the fandom, with its only real competition being the Sonic X series.
Yeah.
Which, of course, had a massive impact on the fandom, which you can still see today as well.
Absolutely.
I still see fan art of Cosmo on DeviantArt every time I log into it.
I still see nods to Sonic X in some official art in Sonic Channel.
Yeah, right. The bio for Cream the Rabbit, actually, on Sonic Channel lists her favorite TV show as The Next So, which was something from the Sonic X series.
Yeah.
Though now we're getting a bit off topic. But it's hard not to. Sonic, as a franchise, is so huge. It's really easy to get lost on a tangent, though. We have been, I suppose, preambling and meandering quite a bit, maybe to avoid what we're about to review.
Yeah, which is the miniseries that started it all.
This is actually what I read first. When I read the comics, I wanted to start from the beginning, and this was the beginning.
Yep.
I liked it at the time when I was 14 or 15.
I liked it when I was a child.
Did you read it when you were a child?
Yeah, I got the Sonic Archives.
I
still have it.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, it's not so nice, but I have it.
So do you want to ramble about the good parts of Sonic for another 10-15 minutes, or do you want to actually talk about... Yeah.
I guess we have to talk about it. Let's get to it. The sooner we get through these times, the beginnings, the sooner we arrive at the parts we want to talk about.
That's a very good point. So yeah, let's get started over at issue number 0.
The first issue.
Yeah, it is. So issue number 0 starts on the story "Don't Cry for Me, Mobius." That's written by Mike Gallagher, who writes everything in this miniseries and quite a lot of the early Archie work in general.
Yeah.
I suppose we probably talk a bit about Mike Gallagher.
He's a piece of shit. I don't like him.
Mike Gallagher is largely irrelevant, I would say.
He did not leave a lasting impact beyond just being there.
It very much feels like Mike Gallagher was being paid to do a job, and he definitely was paid for that job.
Certainly. And he does add some little pieces of canon to Archie Sonic, as loosely as you can say canon. And if I tried to put as much quotation marks as the word canon deserves right now in this comic, I'd be here all day.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I feel like any competent writer would probably just ignore Mike Gallagher's contributions if they could, just because they're really not worth dwelling on.
Certainly.
We are about to dwell on them, but you know.
We aren't writing right now. We're talking about a wonderful comic series that has touched the hearts of many a Sonic fan.
Yes. Getting back to Don't Cry for Mobius, it is penciled, I believe, by Scott Saw, who pencils, I think, everything in issues 0, 1, and 2.
Yeah. Something like that. Until he's relieved of duty by Dave Manick in issue 4, which is issue 3.
Yeah,
which is issue 3.
Issue 3, which is the 4th. Is
Right. Yeah.
Scott Saw does fine. I'm not gonna pretend like he's a Sonic comic artist I've ever thought about deeply before today.
Yeah.
He also does all 4 covers for the miniseries, which, again, are fine.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, other than art flubs, we probably won't be commenting on his work much.
Yeah.
It was all mostly adequate.
He did his job.
He did. He did do his job, and I get the feeling that it was just sort of a job for him, and he did do it.
Yes, and regardless of how I feel about him and his work, I think that he deserved compensation when it got republished.
Oh, definitely. I would say that anytime that a story does get republished, that the people who worked on it should receive royalties for their work, and that's just a pretty basic thing, artsy. Don't cry for me, Mobius. It's not interesting. Sonic's fighting Robotnik, and then he goes back to Knothole. They call it Knothole. Goes down a stump, there's a nice little slide, and then he comes out in this awful cave.
Yeah, the whole story is just... It's about, like, these weeping willows, the Sonic and Sally banter leaves much to be desired, the comedy's god-awful, and the action's a snore. It's not very good. It's not a good start.
Yeah, I suppose we should probably comment a little bit on the fact that these comics are partly based on the Sonic the Hedgehog geek cartoon, otherwise known as Sonic SatAM, which we are also reviewing on our separate, much more positive right now podcast.
What's always new? Yes, and they came out. The comics came out months before the cartoon would air.
Yeah, the cartoon was still in production, I believe, when these issues were coming out, and so there are a number of inconsistencies. One I want to talk about in particular is Sally Acorn.
Yeah!
Because today, for this month, issue number 0, Sally has blonde hair and red fur. Also, she has a ponytail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is unfortunately canon, because later writers would decide, I guess, that we needed that, and they never just retconned it to never exist.
Yeah.
Like any competent writer would, I feel. Anyway. Sally in this first story is very bland, very boring. It is something the comics do kind of sporadically, where instead of Sally's actual character, which, at least for this miniseries, wasn't fully established, so I can't be too hard on it, I guess. But they take away her character, and so just sort of acts as a boring cipher for girl character / love interest stereotypes.
Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of love poured into the characterization of Sally Acorn in these comic books we are looking at today.
Yeah, it's, don't cry for Mobius. The trees are sad because Robotnik has been cutting down trees.
Yeah.
So they're crying, so the cave called Knothole is getting flooded or whatever. Sonic grabs a magic ring from a well, which is specifically called a magic ring. He jumps through the ring, the ring. He jumps through the ring. He makes a wish on the ring, and then Robotnik's wrecking ball flips up over his Eggmobile and lands on his head. Also, Robotnik's in the Eggmobile, which he won't be later on as it gets more and more like SatAM, which did not have the Eggmobile in it.
Indeed.
It is all over this miniseries.
Yeah.
Also, Rotor's called Boomer.
Rotor is called Boomer in these comic books.
My understanding is that they corrected that for all issues other than number 1, which was the second issue.
In the digital reprint, yes, they did correct it in all but one issue.
Because that one had we'll get to it.
Yeah. And the issue bookends on them planting some new trees for these emotional, traumatized, crying trees to be happy about because their friends are being replaced by new trees they don't know or love.
It should of course be noted that the weeping willow is a species of tree. They're just called that.
Yeah.
So even though they're not crying, they are still weeping. Rotor, who's called Boomer, also buries Antoine up to his neck in the dirt. That just seems rude.
He does say, "Oh, saplings." I thought he said plant a sap, because everyone hates Antoine. So that's the end of fuck.
Don't cry for me, Mobius.
Yeah.
I'll cry for you, Mobius. I rate this story 2.
I rate this story 0 Groviles out of Grovile.
Very, very good. Now, something that these early comics did have that later comics dropped, and it's almost unfortunate because they're the best parts of these comics, are little 1 to 2 page pinups and stories, which are very reminiscent to me of artsy.
Yeah.
Like that bloke from Riverdale, what has orange hair.
Yeah, it has 2 girls who just want to get on that, but they can't. Because he flips a coin, but then it lands on its side. It doesn't get on either side, just on the little edge.
And then it rolls down the road and into the sewer.
Yeah. It looks down there, and it's still on its side.
Oh no!
He'll never settle down. He'll just keep kissing these 2 attractive women.
Yeah, and then they'll never invent polyamory.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these little pinups and segments and 1 page and 2 page thingies. First is the Royal Family Tree of Mobius, because yes, these do have titles like they are stories, most of them.
Yeah.
The Royal Family Tree of Mobius shows that Sally is very sad because the literal actual family tree, which is an actual tree, presumably an oak, has been cut down, and she wanted to show it to Sonic. This makes Sally sad, and she cries a tear. I think Sonic, vows vengeance on Robotnik or something.
Yeah, he slams his fist into his open palm and says that he will get that bum.
Ah, yes.
And soon things will be okay.
Very, very good.
Too soon, Sonic. Too soon.
The second little 1 page thing is Sonic 6 with an asterisk speed settings. It starts out jokingly, Sonic speeds, and then there's a 7th one, which is Sonic's Sonic spin, which is what he does when he jumps in the games. The only one I bothered to note down is Subsonic, which is Sonic's swimming speed. And of course, as we all know, Sonic would become very well known for hydrophobia in basically all Sonic media later on.
His 5th speed setting, Hypersonic, involves him outrunning a jet while singing, "When you're a jet all the way."
truly sage advice from Sonic as written by Mike Gallagher.
I believe our third one-page segment is Robotnik's Badniks.
Wow. Which is, I believe, one of the very few times that Archie Sonic actually uses the term badnik. Badnik, of course, was one of the terms introduced by the American canon made up by Sega of America, which was a very simplified and worse version of the actual canon that was presented in Japan. Look at the differences sometime. It's fun.
Yeah.
In Japan, Eggman's mechs are just referred to as Eggman's robots. They don't have a specific fun little name. And as the comic became more based on SatAM, as SatAM came out, they used more of that SO's terminology, which simply also referred to them as Robotnik's machines, his robots, his swap bots at some points.
But right now in the comic, in this page we are introduced to Caterkiller, Ballhog, Jaws, Burrowbot, Motobug, Orbinaut, Splats, Batbrain, Crabmeat, and don't forget his army of SWAT bots.
Yes, the SWAT bots are still here. Notably, their coloration and personality are more reminiscent of SWAT bots in the Sonic SatAM pilot.
Yeah.
As opposed to how they would look in the rest of the actual series proper, which was very different. I suppose that was a very long thing to talk about for a one-pager. But now we have our second story, and would you like to say the title?
Oh no! Robo! Nomo Mobo!
Oh no, Robo Nomo Mobo!
Part 1.
Part 1. Right. This is a thing these comics do a lot in the early series, which they eventually dropped, which was they have multi-part stories, which are really just sort of 5 pages, and then a different 5 pages, and then a different 5 pages, all in the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they're multi-part. I don't know if it was like some sort of edict from Archie or what, but it's weird, and it doesn't really do anything other than make the pacing of the stories awkward at times.
Yeah.
This comic loosely tells us the story of how Robotnik took over Mobius.
Yeah.
In this weird early canon, I guess.
It's the silliest, most underwhelming retelling of how Robotnik took over it, and where Sonic is a delivery boy for Uncle Chuck, and his shop, Chuck's Chili Dogs. Very creative naming in the 90s. And in this, Sonic doesn't know any of the others who would later join him in becoming founding freedom fighters.
Yes, and of course, we're still far away from even the first season of SatAM coming out, let alone the second season, which established that version of the canon, which we'll never be properly getting in this comic ever. But this whole thing is just... Notably, Chuck running a chili dog stand will also be remaining canon.
Yeah.
They do more with it, and this is one of the few early canon things that they integrate later on that works at all.
Yeah. Robotnik... Oh, I'm sorry, spoilers. Someone calls in an order for 200 chili dogs.
Wow, 200?
Yeah, which means that they're rich.
Yeah, all they have to do is a ton of hard labor.
Yeah.
And by they, I mean only Uncle Chuck while Sonic stands around.
Yep. And when Sonic leaves to deliver these chili dogs to the delivery location...
In a wheelbarrow.
That's
how you transport hot, perishable food.
Exactly.
You load it into a wheelbarrow, and then you run away.
And somehow Sonic's face isn't caked in chili when we meet him again. But anyway, immediately after Sonic leaves, Chuck is seized and captured by Dr. Robotnik, along with Mutsky.
Mutsky exists.
Yeah, Mutsky does exist, yes. When Sonic arrives, it's a really ugly factory, and Cluck arrives to take the order, speaking full English. You know, like he does in the show.
You know, I did briefly forget, even though we read this comic not too long ago together, that Cluck was there.
Cluck is here, yes. And here we find out that Sonic says that Cluck owes Chuck's Chili Dogs 300 smackers. And so what's the math on that? Like how much is $1.50 for a chili dog for one of Chuck's famous chili dogs? That dude is no wonder he isn't rich right now. This poor guy selling cheap fast food to provide for his basically his son and his dog.
You know, they really probably should ask for cash up front, because they don't get that money.
No. Cluck instead says that the hedgehog will get what's coming to him, which is apparently that wrecking ball from Sonic 1.
The good old wrecking ball from Sonic 1, also seen in the first story.
Yeah. And when Sonic returns, when he has given up getting payback for the chili dogs that they made, he returns to Chuck's chili dog stand to find that it is being dismantled, with the site being used to erect a new toxic dump, the art tells us.
Oh no, not a toxic dump.
Yeah, as opposed to a really clean dump. So, yeah, that brings us to part 2, where Sonic confronts the SWAT bots dismantling Chuck's chili dog stand, asking what they did with Uncle Chuck and Mutsky. And the SWAT bots, throughout, they include some half-clever, just allusions toward the laws that Robotic has instated.
I will say that the silly no fun allowed-esque laws, you all know that meme image of the SWAT bot anyway.
Yeah.
That's one of the better recurring jokes of this early stuff.
Certainly. And, it is not irrelevant, a SWAT bot saying to his fellow SWAT bots, the hedgehog is exhibiting violent tendencies, so they should terminate with extreme prejudice. So Sonic leaves Chuck's chili dog stand just as quickly as he came, and goes to Robotic's factory again. And it's here we are introduced to Sally, who, in her first chronological appearance, looks like she's about to grab Sonic's butt.
To those ominous hands that viewers remember from the opening.
Yes. And in this moment, Sally yells suddenly from behind Sonic, "Stop!" And then she tries to explain the situation to Sonic. And he is oddly skeptical of there being a king.
You'd think Sonic would be more aware of literally anything of the politics of his home.
Yeah. Instead telling Sally to tell her fairy tales to someone else before revving up to go and assault the factory, only to be stopped by Sally just grabbing at his feet, as so many fans wish they could. And this of course provokes a response from Sonic, where he says, "You got a lot of nerve, little lady. How dare you interrupt?" To which Sally interrupts to let him know that the Buzz Bombers are patrolling the grounds and that he would have fucking died if she hadn't stopped him, which does give Sonic some amount of respect for Sally.
Little lady is definitely something that a 16-year-old says.
Absolutely. And it's in the following page where we find the initial how roboticization looks in these comic books.
I hate it. Thanks.
Yeah, which is just swirly eyes and looking hypnotized and repeating mantras.
They're hypnotized. That means that they're robots.
Yeah!
Uncle Chuck is a robot insofar as he is under hypnotic control.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first canonical interaction between Sonic and Robotnik that we've been shown, and Sonic refers to Robotnik as an industrialist, which is pretty apt. One thing that you can give these comics is that even Mike Gallagher does understand that the Sonic series has a theme of environmentalism.
Indeed, yes.
Something that, some modern fans of Sonic weirdly seem to believe doesn't exist, even though it's literally the one thing everyone in the 90s knew about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Even as they got virtually every other detail wrong.
Yeah.
Uncle Chuck in his hypnotized state, even robotically says, "I promise to ignore all environmental law. One nation under a toxic cloud."
There is a mixture of sort of fascist themes as well as very anti-environmentalist, pro-industrialist themes that go on with Robotnik's MO in these early comics.
Yeah, but... And the thing is, in this early comic book, Robotnik is clearly vastly underprepared for the likes of Sonic, which is evident by Sonic making quick work of what looks like all of Robotnik's SWAT bots, and then leaving with just Sally.
Yeah, it really feels like Sonic should be able to just end this robotic takeover of the world right now, but he doesn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. When he's a child in SatAM, you can understand that he's woefully out of his element and unable to, like, take control of the situation, because he's a small little baby hedgehog.
Robotnik is also way more prepared.
Yeah.
In that version.
Absolutely.
But yeah, then we get Sally introducing Sonic to the concept of the Freedom Fighters.
Which apparently already exists.
A group that already exists and is already working to fight to retake the planet from Robotnik's tyranny that he started this morning after breakfast.
Yeah.
They want to go back to before cereal today, when things were normal and everything was good.
Yeah.
Now it's after lunch. The world's terrible. Sucks.
Yeah. It's that kind of fast-paced world change that we really can't relate to nowadays. Like, things really change at a much slower pace now, and it's not like we're just reeling constantly with things changing at all times.
Yeah. In the modern day, unlike in 1993, it takes at least a week for a totalitarian regime to take over a benevolent monarchy.
Indeed. And the final page is dedicated to Sneaker Peek.
Sneaker Peek?
Which features a close-up of Sonic's shoe.
And what a great shoe it is.
Yeah, check him out, dudes and dudettes, Sonic says, while he presents to us the Spat Strap, the Oreo Dynamic Design, the Right Angle Ankle Roll, the Way to Go Toe, the Real Deal Heel, the Arch Enemy Arch, and don't forget...
Never forget.
As Mike Gallagher writes, the Don't Tread on Me Treads.
Ah, that good old... The snaky flag.
Yeah, which, in 1993, as far as I know, only was associated with libertarianism and those types, which is still bad.
Still pretty bad.
Not as bad as the Tea Party movement, which has done its fair share to plunge the United States into poverty and shit.
Yeah, but I feel like definitely since 1993, a even more negative association than there was at the time has come under fire with that flag.
Yeah.
Please no Steppy.
Please no Steppy.
Please no Steppy.
Yeah.
And that's issue 0.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that took a while to get through. Wow.
Yeah, we probably should pick up the pace.
Yeah. So issue number 1. It's the fast first issue.
Yeah.
Even though it is the second issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off with Run, Sally, Run, which gives us a look at Sally's new redesign, because she's gotten one already.
Yeah.
She has black hair now. Her fur is now pink, where it was red before, but her hair is still in a ponytail. This is, I believe, the version of the design that was used in the pilot episode.
Yes.
Of SatAM, and it sticks around for a little while until they do finally update Sally to appear how she actually looks in the television show, which again has not aired yet, and doesn't air until after the miniseries.
Yep. And in issue 1, which is actually issue 2, because in issue 0 isn't a thing, Sally Acorn hatches a plan that she would later condemn as too risky and bad when Sonic comes up with it later when the comic gets serious. And she keeps Sonic and the others out of it for no reason?
Yeah, so basically, just to skip ahead and summarize the entire plot of this rather boring story, Rotor, aka Boomer, put a special device into Sally's Sue that would have done something when she went through the roboticizer, or whatever they're calling it in these, or the robot maker, the bot on the go.
According to Rotor, the boots would have analyzed the machine so they could reverse its effects.
Yes, which is something that is an ongoing quest in the television show, and also will get brought up later in this series when it gets more serious again.
Hidden cameras. Hidden cameras. Yeah, those are in the boots, recording and computerized jamming sensors in the souls. But the thing is, as the show itself would detail, the roboticizer doesn't play nice with actual, pre-existing cybernetics.
Given that it does say jamming, I'm wondering if the boots were supposed to stop the roboticization process in addition to analyzing it, but I'm not sure, because it never gets used, because Sally doesn't tell Sonic or Antoine or Tails. She lies to them instead.
Yeah.
And then they sew up multiple times to rescue her, and because of course they do.
Of course, yeah.
Keep Sonic in on the plan.
He could have been part of it. He could have, made a token effort to rescue her, which the absence of would have been more suspicious than otherwise.
Yeah, it's we could spend all our day rewriting these terrible stories, but
we'll save that for later.
Yes.
Right now, I just want to just mention that, in general, the stories do a bad job of setting scenes. Details come in and out of relevance. The art doesn't do a great job of conveying the events of the story when the writing fails, and it's just a mess. Mike Gallagher is a dog shit writer, and he does not get better as the comic progresses. He actually arguably gets worse.
I could argue that.
He lampshades in his second issue how he writes the characters narrating whatever is happening, despite the fact that this is a visual medium, and then proceeds to not really be self-aware about it afterward.
We are definitely going to have some conversations about characters saying the things that are happening on the page.
Yeah.
While Mike Gallagher is writing.
Yeah.
Anyway, the plan fails, and Sally is upset at everyone for not going along with our plan that they didn't know about.
Yeah.
We get another one-pager, which is Silent Running, which it's Sonic. He is so fast at baseball that he gets to third base before you can even hear the sound of him hitting the baseball. Wow, Sonic is so fast.
I felt nothing.
Following that is a 2-page spread titled The Good, The Bad, and The Mutsky. Other than canonizing Mutsky as, of course, being above the mortal conceptions of good and evil.
As we all know.
The image is a pretty standard go, with the Freedom Fighters on the left, facing off against the robots on the right, in front of a white void. It's entirely nothing, and there's nothing interesting to talk about, except for one thing.
Yeah.
This is the first appearance of Bunny Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
She looks awful.
Yeah.
Her mechanical limbs are miscolored in pink and yellow, her fur is yellow, and her chest, for some reason, is either robotic or covered in armor, as it looks almost identical to her robotic shoulder. And I get that, the designs, they didn't have the finalized designs, and, honestly, the Archie Sonic comic actually never updates Bunny to her proper coloration or design, unlike with Sally.
No.
And they always color her wrong in some way or another. But this is just awful.
Yeah.
She won't be appearing until issue 3 of the regular series, but God. The second story is called Something Fishy.
Yep.
The most notable part of this story is that there is a pipe pumping pollution into a lake, and it looks kind of like Bowser's head. Well, actually, the most notable thing would probably be that it introduces the bathysphere!
Yes, it does!
Which, do you know what a bathysphere is?
No, I don't.
So, the bathysphere, the vehicle that appears first here and will be later used in the main series at various points, is a submarine. It's just a submarine, and they call it the bathysphere. An actual bathysphere is a very specific type of submarine. I believe in order to be qualified as a bathysphere, you have to be attached by a tether to a larger waterbound vehicle or like a base of some sort. Anyway, it's not a bathysphere.
Yeah.
It's literally not the thing it says it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sonic's subsonic speed does get brought up.
Yeah.
And they tell you to refer back to issue number 0.
I will not. And they can't make me.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, there's nothing really worth talking about in the rest of the issue, so let's go to the next one.
What? Oh, no. We still have to talk about Sonic the Boomer.
Oh god, yeah, we do.
We do. Talk about Sonic the Boomer.
That is a segment where Gallagher does make a political statement, wherein, in the story, Rhoda devotes a page to talking about the slower things in life, like Rhoda's friend Sid, the snail, or the mailman, or U.S. Congress deliberating over an anti-pollution bill. But dumb tish!
Topical. And by topical, I mean it's about American politics.
Yeah, which have not progressed much since 1993. Planet's dying.
Fuck. The planet's dying, Cloud. After that is Ground Rule Double. Sonic is playing tennis by himself to show off how really, really fast he is, because honestly, they did the joke, look at Sonic, he's so fast, he's playing sports by himself in 1993. It wasn't really clever then, it's only gotten more stale with time.
Yes.
Then there's another one-pager. It doesn't have a title. It shows various pictures of Sonic's childhood, the gag being that Sonic is moving so fast in all of them that all you see is a dust trail in the photo. It shows him crawling for the first time, I believe, taking his first steps, where Uncle Chuck is just sort of staring.
That was my favorite part of this comic book, actually.
Yeah, this untitled one, probably the best part.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice. Let's move on to issue number 2, the third issue.
Yeah.
The first story here is a crowning achievement.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually going to talk a little bit about Scott Saw's pencils here, because there was a bit of a notable thing.
Yeah.
A crowning achievement, this first story, declares itself a book-length classic. We'll see.
Yeah. Sonic immediately shows off his speed by going so fast he goes back in time,
I guess.
arriving after Sally calls out to him before she finishes saying his name. But like in the comic book, it shows Sally shouting Sonic the Hedgehog, and it's the logo, but with a crown on top of it, and Sonic running towards her in the throne room balcony, desk window.
Yeah, so she's at a little desk window.
Yeah, which doesn't seem that far away from her.
Yeah, and there's a sign that pointing at it or behind it saying throne room. She calls out Sonic the Hedgehog, and then Sonic hears her and comes running.
Yeah, and on the comic, it looks like he's just showing up midway through her calling his name again, which happens in real life. That's just a thing.
But you see, Sonic ran so fast that after he heard his name being called, that by the time he got there, Sally was being interrupted by him already being there. So she never actually finished saying his name, meaning he never actually heard it, meaning he never showed up, meaning that she wasn't interrupted, meaning that she got to finish calling his name, meaning that Sonic heard it, meaning that Sonic decided to go double the speed of sound, which instead of rupturing Sally's eardrums, just let him appear before. Anyway.
Vavushka!
The
desk window where the throne room is grows off the floor over the course of multiple panels, to the point where she has to climb down like a mountain climber by the end of it. The art is just all over the fucking place. What a disgrace. Destroy toxic masculinity.
It's really notable how it just sort of is like Sally's height, a bit extra off the ground, and then it just grows.
Yeah.
In this story, we are introduced to the magic crown of the Acorn Kings.
Yeah.
It'll get retconned later, so we don't have to worry too much about the Freedom Emeralds that are on top of it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Sally asked Sonic to crown her as queen or king or whatever. I don't think coronations work that way. But the crown is immediately revealed to be stolen, so it doesn't matter all that much.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a faffing about, oh no, how could it be stolen? The guards were here. And, oh, well, that explains it, says Sonic, because he's saying that Antoine sucks at training guards. Sonic burns the rubber off his soles so that the fire alarm in the cave will go off, so that the sprinklers in the cave will go off.
Yeah.
So that the robot pig will turn purple, and then he explodes, and Sonic runs him out of the cave and dies.
Yeah. It's so sad. Just tragic. I couldn't stop crying. I just...
Sally was
tears.
also crying.
Yeah.
And while Sally was mourning Sonic's death, Part 2 begins, and Sonic interrupts Sally, stopping her from admitting that she loves him.
Well, Cluster, actually, she corrects him and you now, by saying that she actually was going to be saying that she loved Sonic's recipe for pumpkin pie.
Of course, Sonic's famous pumpkin pie recipe,
which will of course be referenced throughout Sonic canon in over the course of this comic book.
If there's two things that people remember Sonic for food-wise, it's chili dogs and pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like she could have referenced Sonic's chili dog recipe, something that Sonic's actually known for. No, pumpkin pie.
No. So next they go up. They go up to stop Robotnik and his escort of buzz bombers and bat brains, and Robotnik's blimp, of course, which has a giant mustache.
Of course it does.
And it's here we learn that Antoine has gone to college.
Apparently.
Yeah. Antoine has gone to college, and it has been long enough ago that he will nostalgically recount these times to anyone who asks. Which...
How very Antoine-like.
Which implies some adulthood to Antoine that makes Bunny Rabbit and her later enrollment in brief Mobotropolis High School very problematic for their romance.
I mean, Antoine will later be shown to be the same age as Sally and Sonic. I feel like this is a case of Mike Gallagher doesn't care.
And people who were writing that segment I referenced later did not care about Mike Gallagher, as they should, or should not have.
Yeah. It's almost like a writer who was potentially competent was writing that part.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get to that when we get to that.
Yeah.
Anyway, in this issue, Archie Sonic actually invents the homing attack.
Yeah.
And being a bit facetious, Sonic bounces along a line of robots in order to approach and then pop Robotnik's very silly-looking blimp. It's very similar to doing a chain of homing attacks in the Adventure and Forward games.
Yeah. And it's here that we get a wonderfully gay panel where Sonic and Antoine lock hands together. They hold each other's hands while in the air.
And it is so beautiful, and Antoine's like, I will never let you go. Oh, and he's very French.
Yes.
Because his accent is not remotely being written yet into the comic. And it will be embarrassingly written into the comic later, so.
Yeah.
Which is better?
In this issue, and the previous issue, and the previous issue, and next issue, and probably a few issues after that, Antoine is written more as just an asshole that Sonic can't stand, as opposed to the... I can't believe I'm saying this. More multifaceted character of the SatAM cartoon.
Antoine definitely, in early Archie Sonic, has way less character and is way less palatable.
Indeed.
Whereas Antoine is actually quite lovable in SatAM.
Mm-hmm.
He has his moments where he's less lovable, but overall I adore him.
As do
I. And definitely, the comics get better about everything eventually.
Yeah.
But they get better at writing Antoine.
Certainly.
Anyway, interrupting the main story, we are greeted by a 2-page long Top 10 Reasons Why Sonic the Hedgehog is the Coolest Comic Book Around. It has much better jokes than the rest of this issue.
Yeah!
Yeah, and there's like a little gag about how Sally only wears boots.
Yeah. Which is fun and ages poorly with what they do with Sally's design later in the comics. Back in the main story, a plot point is made of the characters having 5 fingers.
But I'm pretty sure they're drawn with only 4 for a period of time in the comic. I definitely remember commenting on that when we were reading through the comic together.
Yeah.
They later had 5 again, but in SatAM, if I remember correctly, characters were drawn with 4 fingers.
Yeah.
And that was a whole thing, and I think that's probably what gets reflected in the later drawing of the characters with 4 fingers, but of course in actual Sonic canon, the characters have 5 fingers for
4 reasons.
Well, there is a whole thing about having characters with 5 fingers, specifically in Japanese media.
Yeah.
But enough about the Yakuza. Sonic does get the Freedom Emeralds back. It's a pretty boring sequence of fighting some robots and then going into a hole. They get the emeralds back and they all get put back on the Crown of Acorns, which I thought was stolen.
It was also supposed to be regained and reclaimed for the purposes of finding King Acorn again.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over that and we didn't talk about it, but yeah, Sally in the beginning mentioned how she wanted to use the power of the Crown of Acorns to find King Acorn, her father, who is somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
But Sally is now magically crowned, sees king. Sally's king now. That's cool. Yay.
Yeah. But the ending of the comic is interrupted by Dr. Robotnik, who tells the comic to wait a dad-blamed minute before it ends, and spends an entire page complaining about how he didn't get his big scene in the entire comic. It has Big saying I am being silenced on a TV show energy.
Yeah. I like it when they draw Robotnik. These early comics feel very more Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog than they do SatAM, but of course the design of Robotnik is SatAM and not Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which had a very different, more comical design for the character.
Indeed. The comic spends exorbitant amounts of time explaining the science behind every little thing Sonic can do, and I don't need that information.
They do tell it to you, though.
Yeah, they do, and I don't care, and it actively just makes the whole thing a slug. The whole thing, every comic, feels like it stretches, like, beyond 20 issues, and I'm just, like, stuck in, like, a fucking time loop until it's over. I've lost years of my life reading just these 4 issues of the miniseries of Sonic the Hedgehog.
I really hope that us talking about this miniseries is a lot more entertaining than reading it has been, because, good lord.
Good lord. Bad lord.
Let's get to issue number 3, the 4th issue.
Yeah.
And then we can be done with this, and we can move on to comics that are just as bad. Eventually it'll be good again, or ever. God.
The cover of this issue is the only one I feel like is noteworthy in that it's a reference to the games that is kind of cute. And that's it.
There's a loop.
Yeah.
So the first story in this final 3rd, 4th issue is Sonic Flashback. Now, it is again written by Mike Gallagher, but this whole 3rd issue, I believe, is penciled instead by Dave Manak. Now, Dave Manak will actually go on to do quite a lot of penciling for a pretty big portion, I feel, of the early comics, and I think maybe into the midpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely remember seeing his name coming up a lot.
Yeah.
The issue proper opens on a prologue, where prologue is not written with the U or the E that I believe it is generally written with, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Before it flashes back to Sonic busting crab meats, before flashing back again to Sonic's childhood that he spent with Robotnik,
Sonic the Hedgehog in Sonic Flashback, or, quote, what if Sonic and Robotnik were kids together?
What if they were kids together?
Part 1. Yeah.
So in this canon,
We're already up to 2 canons in Archie Sonic.
a Robotnik is an orphan who Uncle Chuck is trying to help out by taking up to the farm every few weeks. You know, the farm that Sonic and Uncle Chuck live on. Do keep up.
Yeah.
I should note, Robotnik's design as a child is almost identical to adult design. It's just basically scaled down, and the mustache is taken off. And that's about all they did.
Yes.
Robotnik has a little toy soldiers that he commands around, and Sonic thinks that makes him creepy. There's a little interaction where Robotnik's like, I hate hedgehogs. And Sonic's like, hey, Uncle Chuck, who's helping you out, is a hedgehog. And so Robotnik's like, well, then I guess I just hate one hedgehog. You.
Yeah.
And they are children who hate each other inexplicably, I guess.
I mean, there is some fat missia in Sonic's hatred of little old Robbie Robotnik.
Yeah. Uncle Chuck calls him Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best part of this. It's a dream. It's a fucking dream. It's a dream. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This whole story is a dream. It was a dream story. We got to the end and we stopped writing notes. We wrote more notes than this, but I don't care. It's a dream and I hate it and it sucks.
Yeah.
A bunch of stuff happens, but it doesn't matter because it's all a dream.
I mean, none of this really matters because it's not real, Cluster. It's a story book. It's a comic book story.
This is a double story.
And in the next story, we have Why Ask Spy.
So, Sonic is disguised as a robot in order to fool Robotnik into thinking that he has been roboticized.
Yeah.
The disguise is that Sonic is wearing a bear trap on his face and has red swirly contact lenses.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the disguise.
Before they have Sonic go to Robotropolis and present himself to Robotnik as a roboticized ex-freedom fighter, Sonic and Sally stage an incident where Sonic, seemingly roboticized, is chasing after Sally. And Sally is, of course, calling for help from Tails.
And Tails is very confused and scared, but then Sonic claims that he's not programmed to deal with two organics and runs off.
Yeah, for Sally to give Tails credit for saving her. And then asks that he keep this little incident their secret.
It is, in my opinion, the dialogue here is a bit... It feels like Sally is hitting on Tails? What with the way she's like, oh, keep this incident our secret, and then he walks off looking dazed?
Yeah.
As if a pretty older girl just gave him a kiss?
Yeah.
She didn't give him a kiss, but like, it has that energy, and I don't know why. Oh god, Mike Gallagher was the one who did that stuff later, wasn't he?
Yeah.
God. We'll get to that anyway. Tails writes and publishes an entire newspaper all about how he saved Sally from a roboticized Sonic, and Buzz Bomber shows up and steals it.
Networks vie for movie rights.
Ah, yes, of course. Yeah. Buzz Bomber presents news for Robotnik, but Robotnik doesn't need that news.
Robotnik doesn't give a shit because he already has Sonic, and then. God, we're over an hour into this. Robotnik tells Sonic to blow up Knothole. Sonic stalls for time. Then Sonic is sent to the crab compound where he finds Uncle Chuck, and he's sad about that. And he sees Mutsky.
Now let's talk about that though.
Yeah.
Now Sonic's disguise of a bear trap and swirly contact lenses shouldn't work, but when we see Uncle Chuck, he just has swirly eyes.
Yeah.
He is otherwise a flesh person. But Mutsky shows up, and Mutsky looks identical to how roboticized Mutsky looks in SatAM. AKA, he is a metal dog.
To which Sonic says, Mutsky, my old pal, come here, give me a great big kiss.
But then Mutsky growls at him, and that's when Sonic knows that Mutsky is a robot.
Not when he sees the metallic, shiny gob of this killer robot dog who whose jaw looks not unlike that Bear Trap Sonic was using as a disguise earlier.
So we wrote notes to go along with things, and the last note after I wrote about Mutsky is just
Yeah, predictably, Sonic uses this situation to get one over on Robotnik, and then that's the end of the comic. And I also left my own final note in the notes for this episode in the Google Doc, and it consists of fuck these comic books.
Yep.
And with that, we have talked about them, and no one can say we didn't.
I say it's time for some closing statements.
Okay, fuck these comic books.
Yes, but I'd like to say that these comics are not indicative of what is to come, but the comics that start the series proper are basically this, if I remember correctly.
Something like them, yeah. And it'll be a while until they become anything noteworthy.
Yeah, now, I do want something to be very clear as well as we go through these.
Yeah.
Because we're now... Let's talk more about Archie Sonic as a whole again, moving forward. This miniseries came out over the course of 4 months.
Yeah.
Is my understanding, because Archie Sonic the Hedgehog was a monthly comic series during its entire run. Not counting, of course, when miniseries and side series would come out that would come out also on a monthly schedule.
Yes.
What that means is that, stories move slowly. People were left in anticipation every month to see what would happen next. A big problem that people have had when looking back through, including myself, I've been guilty of this, is that we have the ability to just read these all at the same time, and that divorces us and our perceptions from the actual way that it was experienced, which I can never emulate. I never read these when I was a child. I never read these when they were coming out. I only read them afterwards. So there's definitely some amount of gravity and some amount of, impact to specific moments that won't feel the same to anyone looking back on them, the same way that they do if you were experiencing them monthly. And as well, it won't take us that long to get to the comics actually starting to become competent.
Mm-hmm.
But in the time of the actual comics, it took well over a year, I feel. Well over 2 years, probably. I'd say probably well over 2 years before the comics really started to hit any kind of stride.
Yeah.
Some of the bigger story events don't really even start happening until, issue 40 or later?
Yeah.
It's a long, rough road, but we will get there in the end. And it was a much longer road back when they were being first printed. Something that I would definitely want to keep in mind as we get to the bigger moments of the comic is thinking about how our experience definitely does differ, and I still want to be critical, and I still want to rate these stories. Number ratings are not actually a thing that we're doing. I just did it as a joke earlier, but I do want to express a definite critical side to how these comics are.
Yeah.
And I want to highlight, I want to be fair.
Absolutely. And when you love something, it's important to not gloss over the parts of it that fall short, because understanding those parts, understanding those elements, helps us to deepen our appreciation for the parts that do succeed, that do manage to shine amidst all of the lesser parts.
Yeah. There will definitely come a time in this podcast where I will definitively declare when I believe we have entered the golden age of the Archie Sonic series, and I am looking forward to how people react to when exactly I say that. And you all can stay tuned and wait to see when that happens.
Yeah. And it'll also be interesting for people to see when you think we've hit the definitive it's all downhill from here moment.
Yeah. I definitely have a specific moment in mind.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We will get to The point of no return. No backwards glances. God, it has been it's been almost an hour and 20 minutes of recording.
Yep.
Miniseries sucks.
It does. It does.
I get that this is like meant to be a children's comic, but I have a higher opinion of children than Mike Gallagher, and I believe that they deserve better than this.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
We've been a little bit silly productions over here.
Thanks for visiting Mobius again with us after all these years. And, we hope you join us again next week when we're back again with What's Old is New.
Yes, and if you haven't checked out and heard the first episode of What's Old is New, that will have been released the previous Friday.
Yeah.
We are going to be alternating between Mobius and Back Again and What's Old is New, and maybe in the future, some other things.
Who knows?
I know.
But who of our audience knows?
I mean, if I tell them, then all of them.
Well, don't tell them. It'll be funner this way.
Oh, I'm not telling you anything.
Well, tell me things.
No, not you.
It's been fun.
It's been long.
Thanks for joining me, Cluster.
Thanks. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. It's been.
Bye.
Bye.